The World of Warcraft Shadowlands leveling revamp, circa BlizzCon 2019, Day 2. So close to Time Walker mode and Classic mode. Does Blizzard even realize how close they are to fixing one of the most fundamental problems with how World of Warcraft's content fits together? Let's talk, ladies and gentlemen. This is MultimediaJay Radio Style for Sunday, November 3rd, 2019. Let's start the show.
MultimediaJay Radio Style.
Ladies and gentlemen, BlizzCon 2019 has gone into the history books, and Blizzard didn't make me look like an idiot. Instead, with the World of Warcraft Shadowlands deep dive and the Q&A, which didn't really address any of my concerns anyway, so we'll just gloss that and talk about the deep dive. With these breakout sessions on Day 2 of BlizzCon, Blizzard showed that, once again, whenever a good idea comes their way from somewhere other than themselves, they have to try to be clever, try to be original, and the result ends up half-cooked. This was an absolute tease of Time Walker mode and Classic mode. Blizzard is so close to being able to have these features with the decisions they've made regarding Shadowlands and the revamp of the leveling system, but they come up short. And in their current form, unless they're improved later on, as we get closer to release, maybe in the alpha and the beta, I mean, there's still development time to iterate on these things and update some of these plans. Unless Blizzard does some more work, if things released as is with what they were talking about at BlizzCon 2019, then this is not going to do what it needs to do in terms of catching up World of Warcraft to its competitors in the MMO world. So, let's talk. First, let's talk about the what, how this is all going to work, and then we'll dive into the theory crafting, the speculation, and the interpretation of Blizzard's actions here. So at the Day 1 breakout sessions at BlizzCon 2019, it was revealed that in Shadowlands, leveling is getting revamped into a 3-stage process. You're going to have your starting experience from levels 1 to 10. You're going to have Shadowlands from levels 50 to 60, which is the new level cap. And then the space between 10 and 50 is going to be your leveling expansion. You're going to get to pick what you want to do, unless, as we found out today, you're a new player, in which case you have to play through Battle for Azeroth in order to get the backstory behind what's going on in Shadowlands. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So, the graphic that I picked for this podcast is basically a souped-up version of the slide for the new leveling flow for existing players and alts. This is what World of Warcraft becomes like for seasoned veteran players like myself and others who might be curious about the world getting a little bit more like the way more immersive, way more worth being out in worlds in other MMOs. For new players to World of Warcraft, there is a new starting area, which becomes optional once you've been through everything once. But there's a new modernized starting area that even has a mini dungeon at the end of it to introduce people to outdoor content and dungeon running and the basics of their class and their rotation and stuff. I imagine it's basically the next generation, so to speak, of the kind of teaching how to play your class sort of thing that buying a boost previously did. Except now you don't have to buy a boost to get this kind of tutorial experience. So new players get the new Start Zone experience, and then they go through Battle for Azeroth to get the backstory to Shadowlands. Now, if you're a returning player who's playing an alt, or you're already playing the game, the flow is what's in this slide. You have your Start Zone choice, either the new area or the original area, and of course you have the Death Knight Start Zones and the Demon Hunter Start Zones for the alternative origin stories of those classes. And then you run into Chromie. Chromie, of course, being basically the time traveler extraordinaire of Azeroth. So you pick an expansion including the original game. This is where it gets interesting when it comes to classic mode, to level from 10 to 50, and then you head off to the Shadowlands. What's particularly a real tease for me is that I'm talking about classic mode and Time Walker mode, which, to quickly recap, classic mode was an idea where you went to, and I'm going to use the end screen to link to my previous discussions on this stuff. It's hilarious how I've been guessing stuff quite well since getting back into this game for the first time in a couple of years. But for Time Walker mode and classic mode, here's what I had in mind earlier. We're just going to do a quick recap. You can listen to my podcasts that go into more detail on these ideas in other parts of the channel. But for classic mode, because Blizzard got World of Warcraft Classic working by marrying up old data with a semi-recent client, they've already done most of the work that they would need in order to reintroduce the pre-Cataclysm Azeroth as an experience into the game. And with Time Walker mode, there was this idea I had where instead of everything being completely boring and face roll when you leveled past it, you would turn on Time Walker mode with some Bronze Dragonflight representative in your capital city, faction capital, of course. And it would basically be party sync without needing someone else in the level range. So you would be synced over to the maximum level for the zones that you went to. Now, both of these ideas were based on the context of Battle for Azeroth, but with the revamp of everything in Shadowlands, where all previous content is up to level 50, this idea becomes even simpler and easier to implement. And because existing players and alts are going to be running into Chromie anyways, and Chromie's in the capital cities, you've got just about everything you need for classic mode and Time Walker mode, just not that exact idea. It is insane how close Blizzard got to this idea without connecting the rest of the dots and making it happen. It's ridiculous. They've got Chromie involved. There's a sense of time travel, basically. You're going to travel back in time to go do Lich King or Cataclysm or Mists of Pandaria or Warlords of Draenor or whatever, and then once you get to level 50, Chromie time is over and you head off to the Shadowlands. So, Chromie time is over? Are you kidding me? You've already got Chromie involved. You've already introduced a time travel element that you activate in your capital city, finish what you started, so that if you want to take a break from Shadowlands and go see, what Burning Crusade was all about or something like that, you can go back to Chromie and you can basically get locked to level 50 or whatnot and go through the stories in those zones and have them not be completely boring. And the best part is that would be 100% optional. Heck, the presentation even said that when you pick your level up expansion, you're basically doing outdoor time walking. So close. Just make this a feature that's not just for leveling up, that Chromie can help you with at any time from the capital cities, and put the people that are time walking outdoors, so to speak, or leveling in a separate phase from the people that are blowing everything up with AoE because they're max level and going back to old zones. So close to such a killer feature that would make this game return to contention with other games that have similar features, and a world where something other than the current landmass, continent, set of zones, whatever, matters. One of the longest running ironies in World of Warcraft is that the expansions don't really expand the game. Going all the way back to Burning Crusade, deprecating the old world, so-called expansion packs basically make everything else obsolete. They don't really expand anything. But if you play Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, Star Wars The Old Republic, Final Fantasy XIV to an extent, when you get an expansion, the world gets bigger, and there are reasons and ways to not lose all the old stuff in the process. Now, Blizzard's brass have said they want a sense of progression, and with the game as it is, with the normal way of playing through the game, you get that. But if you want the option of talking to Chromie and getting level synced to go do Mists of Pandaria or whatever, that would be player freedom if there was an option to have Chromie help you out with that after you finished leveling to level 50. And notice the pattern here with this almost but not quite thing with all these game features. Party sync is almost but not quite the kind of downscaling that would make it so you could go back to parts of the old world and do some stuff here and there without it completely being a boring face roll, one-shot everything in sight. Ugh, yeah, I'm past the level range for this stuff, and it's dull as all heck. So close. And here's another teaser here. We're getting Chromie involved. We're getting time travel, or some facet of it involved. One of the options available for players is the so-called original World of Warcraft, which is really the old world with Cataclysm having happened. So, the old level up experience in Cataclysm, which one of the biggest narrative problems with Cataclysm's newly revamped world as it was at the time was that many of the zones that were redone were basically sequels of their original versions. And some of the story elements in the zones didn't make any sense if you hadn't played the original game. Now here's the thing. Blizzard just got World of Warcraft Classic working by marrying up an old version of the game with a recent client. If they finish the job and put the pre-Cataclysm Azeroth back into the game, it could become something you could choose when you talk to Chromie to pick your level up expansion, or to go back and time walk, so to speak. I mean, we do have Blizzard folks on record now talking about outdoor time walking, so they're making steps. But how come Blizzard always has to do everything through baby steps? And no, I know the fad this year is, well, just please don't interpret that as baby steps. No, we're not going there. But I think, though, in terms of putting the pre-Cataclysm Azeroth experience back in the game as something that Chromie could send you to, I think the big thing holding that up is Blizzard wouldn't want to do that before everything had cycled through in the classic client. So we'll put this one on the shelf for now and revisit it later. But in terms of the Time Walker idea, they've said outdoor time walking. Why don't they finish what they started with that idea? Like I said, so close, and yet they come up short. It's embarrassing. So I guess the real idiot test here is to keep an eye on Blizzard to see if they ever figure out what they can do with this. See if they ever figure out this missing link that would make all of this content now something that people could experience even after they finished leveling again. Let's see if they ever figure that out. Because they're already showing the desire for something like that with the new leveling experience. If you watch the deep dive presentation, the presenter actually laments at the lost expansion stories because, hey, we got all this content, but with our current level up experience, you don't really get to experience it. Okay, finish that thought. Make it so that people don't need to have a bazillion alts in order to play through all this content and get all these stories, because it may not be something that's too interesting to a lot of WoW players right now because they're used to the way things have been, where leveling is this 120 level slogfest, and you will have to go through everything, and it's so boring, and you just want to dungeon grind, and it's just like the presentation said, leveling takes too long, it's a chore, and it keeps you away from playing with your higher level friends and experiencing the current content without buying a boost. It's just that sort of thing where it makes tacky $60 boosts something that seems necessary in some cases, rather than slogging it through, notably over a decade's worth of old content, just to get to the stuff that everybody's talking about. Don't get me wrong, I think that the changes that Blizzard wants to make in Shadowlands are going to improve the game. But that's from the perspective of improving the game from the crappy state that it was in before. It's kind of like, I've heard this from the Asmongold crowd, I think. It was one of the commentators that I listened to about World of Warcraft mentioned once that Blizzard shouldn't try to impress people by giving them back stuff. Basically, stuff that Blizzard took away, and then they try and make a big deal out of giving back stuff that they already took away before. Like the old skills and abilities that are coming back. Okay, Paladin auras are coming back. Warlock curses are coming back. Rogue poisons are coming back. It's something that players had before and lost. All Blizzard's doing is giving back something they already took away once. That's not an improvement. That's getting back to where we were before. In the same manner, it's not really all that great to talk about improvements to the game from the perspective of WoW if you're fishbowled by Blizzard. World of Warcraft is coming off of a very crappy state. So being slightly less crappy isn't really improvement. It's not improvement until the game actually improves again, as opposed to digging itself out of the hole that it's dug for itself for about a decade or so. I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. I'm, of course, in the camp that believes that everything started going downhill after Ulduar, so mid-Lich King. But we can't be celebrating stuff that improves the game, but still leaves it behind its competitors. Let me tell you something. If I play ESO, the way it is in Tamriel is there's stuff that I haven't done in the original game, even though I played through some of the expansions. But even though I want to do the original game stuff first, I'm not going to put off Palatine, for example, the latest content pack that was released in the Season of the Dragon, because of stuff that I haven't done from the original game, like in the Aldmeri Dominion or the Ebonheart Pact or something like that. But the stories are compartmentalized enough, the zone stories that is, that I can head out there and just get them done at some point. And it's not something that's going to be a total snooze fest because I'm one-shotting everything. The game could use a difficulty bump just like World of Warcraft could use one. But one edge that Tamriel has over Azeroth and Shadowlands, if you want to call it that, one edge that ESO has over WoW is that the world does get bigger as you unlock DLC and purchase expansions or get new expansions or have new stuff release. So it's not like, okay, nothing else is going to matter except what just came out. Great example of this. If you go to Somerset, technically old content, and you go to the capital city of Alinor, the High Elf capital, you're still going to see a lot of people running around that city, because it's a pretty city. It has a crafting area, it has all the guilds, it has everything you need in a major city. And it looks nice, because it's the High Elf capital. It looks like some fairy tale or Disneyland or what have you. So, but in World of Warcraft, it would be old content, and it would be deserted. Except for like one or two people leveling through it for some strange reason. And I'm speaking, of course, from 2019 Battle for Azeroth's point of view. If things change when Shadowlands comes out, obviously this is all going to go obsolete, but compared to how things are now, the world of Tamriel is more interesting, more engaging, and more worth being out in than most of World of Warcraft's world is. It's not as convincing as, say, Skyrim Special Edition with the really nice graphics and the 64-bit codebase, but it's definitely not like school play paper props, cartoon world, like what we have here, although the art team has done very good jobs over the last several expansions, making the visuals pretty nice. But there could be a little bit more immersion in the World of Warcraft than what we currently have, and I think there might be more of a compelling reason to create that if we weren't just blasting through to whatever the latest landmass is for the latest expansion. So it's just this whole getting to the good stuff thing. Caving, as you can technically say Blizzard did with this new leveling setup, to make it easier to get to the good stuff, misses the point. The problem is that you wanted to get to the good stuff in the first place. And the good stuff is always the latest stuff. Why? I mean, beginning with Warlords of Draenor, there were incredible leveling up experiences with wonderful zone stories as you went through the zones in alternate timeline Draenor. So, is all of that now worthless simply because Shadowlands is coming out? What if someone's never played through any of that? So they're going to pick an expansion, and they're not going to have a clue about any of the other ones, and if they do go back and do those stories, they're going to be face rolls. Boring. No, folks. I'm sticking to my original ideas for Time Walker mode and Classic mode, even if Blizzard delays Classic mode until after WoW Classic has gone through all of its content cycles. But although what was discussed at BlizzCon 2019 does represent a step forward for the game, you have to maintain the proper perspective of things. If things went live, as these folks just got done bragging about on the stage, it would improve World of Warcraft, but only to the extent that it's better than how lousy it was before. It wouldn't improve it to the point where there was functional parity with the worlds in other MMOs, like Guild Wars 2 and Star Wars The Old Republic and ESO. Once again, it all comes down to perspective and not getting fishbowled by Blizzard. But to an extent, I really can't be too critical of Blizzard because of BlizzCon, because of course, what we're dealing with here. BlizzCon is a Blizzard convention. The audience is obviously going to be extremely biased in favor of Blizzard fanboyism and stuff like that. It would be a completely different story if the Blizzard brass were trying to talk about this stuff at a more general gaming convention that may have some folks that are antagonistic to Blizzard products wandering into the sessions, where the audience isn't totally, completely, and totally all goo-goo gaga about anything Blizzard says on the stage. It would be a completely different story if it wasn't BlizzCon. So I know there's bias inherent in BlizzCon, but seriously, the best thing I can say about these ideas in the deep dive for revamping this game and making the older content mesh a little bit better with whatever the current content is it's a rough draft. And let's not forget, folks, this is a game that is in development. Things are still subject to change, and if anybody remembers how Warlords of Draenor went, there was quite a bit of stuff talked about at BlizzCon that was modified, pruned down, or completely cut from the game. So, again, this is all in development and subject to change. And that, I think, is the one silver lining of all of this. There's still plenty of time for Blizzard to take the next step, or stumble upon the rest of this Time Walker mode, classic mode idea that I have themselves, and so think it up on their own and be able to pass it off as their own idea, which is what they like to do anyways. Look at this wonderful idea we have! We're Blizzard! Woohoo! So I hope they do that. There's still plenty of time for them to figure this out and realize just how stupid it would be if they came this far and didn't finish the race, so to speak. They're so close to fixing one of the most fundamental problems with this world versus other game worlds out there. Let's see if they can figure out the rest of it sometime between now and the beta, or between now and the release or something. So I will probably, when I get done playing some of the other games that I'm playing right now, like Star Wars The Old Republic Onslaught and whatnot, check out the rest of BFA as kind of like a story-only MMO, maybe level some alts or something. ESO remains my main game, because the story's interesting and the world is more immersive. There's a couple problems with ESO, like the difficulty's too low, and some of the scaling is kind of wonky when you think about being able to go into all kinds of dangerous places when you're level 1 with the fast travel system, and of course things scale with you like an offline Elder Scrolls game, so it's a little weird that you can go into a very, very dangerous area at level 1 and survive. But, yeah, just Blizzard, so close. Finish what you started, Blizzard. Finish what you started. You're already making people happier by doing an about-face with this BlizzCon stuff. Now let's see the follow-through. Plus, there's already going to be joking going on because the Death Knight starting area is levels 1 to 10 too, so now you're like, well, hero classes don't make any sense starting from level 1. Oh, look, there's going to be level 1 Death Knights now. Well, to be fair, level 1 Demon Hunters as well. But we'll wait and see. I'll check the game out again at some point. I've got other stuff to do right now. But Blizzard, take a step back and look at all you've accomplished with just these ideas. Then look at some other games, some of which are competing with World of Warcraft these days and doing pretty well. And realize that there are some good ideas floating around out there that don't just involve creating a World of Warcraft version of Final Fantasy XIV's Deep Dungeons via the Tower of the Damned. Oh, that one was a low blow, but no. Hey, like I said with regards to ESO, at this point, WoW could rip off other games blatantly, and it would improve the game. I actually am curious about the Tower of the Damned as a deep dungeon, randomly generated, things get harder, there's little gambits and things that modify things. It's basically reminding me of Final Fantasy XIV's Palace of the Dead, and to an extent, Guild Wars 2's Fractal system. But like I said, going into BlizzCon, it's not so much about whatever new content Blizzard can brag about With Shadowlands, it's about making all of the content fit together better, because that's something that this game versus its competitors is very, very sorely lacking. So, let's see what happens from here on out, and act accordingly. Blizzard, it's all up to you, pal. Get to work. This could be a good one if you play your cards right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.
You walk out and say